Alright, thank you very much. Hello everybody, it's your good friend Pozzible here, and I'm back in action doing what I do best, and that is watching the movies and doing the reviews. But this again is a different kind of movie review. This is going to be something a lot of you may have not heard of, and it's going to be very unique because it's all about Phoenix Comicon. This year, 2014, they always have a film festival, and back in the day, I remember when the film festival used to be around the 122, 123 region. And somebody just went in there and they just played it. Never really said anything. Never really talked to anybody. It was a great place to go to escape the heat or the busyness. If you didn't have anything to do and you needed to relax, this is where you went. That said, it has changed. That was before I became Pozzible. Now that I'm a film critic, it's time for me to review the film challengers. This particular group, they actually put in their movies as a form of a film challenge. So at the end, they won a prize. Some of them did. I don't know who did. I wasn't able to make it to that. I was very busy on Sunday. But I was able to stick around and watch the film challenge. So let's go through these movies one at a time. I will confess, I don't have my notes with me. Pretty irresponsible, I know, but I'm going to do we're going to rely on my memory, which is another way of saying you're all in big trouble. All right, let's get started. We start with the first one, What Bit Me Last Night. This is a particular genre of movie that I really don't care for. It's the nerd reference movies. Nerd reference movies are basically movies where they have it all. This guy is going to the bathroom, reading his comic book like he's supposed to. His friend is knocking on the door, and it turns out his friend has been sleeping and was bitten by a werewolf and a zombie, and a vampire, and at least 2 or 3 other monsters. So he's starting to come out with all their mannerisms, while at the same time, losing his humanity to whatever monster is going to overtake him, which is going to be all of them, apparently. That's supposed to be the joke. Get it? The problem with this one is it went too long. Once you pretty much got where they were going, you had more groans than you did last, and it just took them too long to get there. So What Bit Me Last Night is not something I would recommend. Next up, The Comic Dead. This is another version of the long drawn-out joke. Let me set the scene for you. It's nighttime. It's at a comic book store. The 2 workers are working hard at nothing because there's nobody in the store. That's why they're both there. And it's late at night, and where's the boss? Well, he's at Phoenix Comicon, of course. And what should come in but a zombie? Now, of course, it's Phoenix Comicon, so you're thinking cosplay. Only we know it's not cosplay. It's that old cliche of the person that is a threat doesn't appear to be a threat, and the person that isn't a threat is a threat. But the point I'm trying to make here is the zombie comes in and just stares at the comic books and groans like a zombie. They think he's acting. It turns out it's real, and things get a little bit serious. All in a comedic effect that falls erroneously flat. So I'm sorry the Comic Dead didn't push in. Next up, now we're getting into some good movies. This is only going to be somewhat in order, just so you know, so it's not going to be 100% in order. But the next movie that showed up, Spur. Now Spur was really interesting, though it could have done without the 2 bully cops making fun of this one cop who believes that there's a cowboy committing vigilante justice. He can't prove it, and everybody thinks he's full of it. They want him to go after some real bad guys, people who are leaving actual notes and stuff. But it turns out that the cowboy is real and very tough to handle. You never see his face. He's very mysterious, and they got a very good acting, very good plot development here. The whole thing, in reality, is not about setting up just a show. It's about setting up a comic book. This is like an origin story, okay? The cop who's trying to find the hero finally finds him, and they make sort of a deal that the cop will, the cowboy won't kill the bad guys. He will point the bad guys out to the cop. Sorry about that. And the cop will take care of him from there. After all, it is the duty of law and justice to deal with this stuff, not vigilantes. Good story. Ended on an interesting note. And from what I understand, it's a webcomic, so I'm going to have to look it up, and when I find out more, I will let you know. Another good one, Codename Shade. Codename Shade is about a assassin who has to go and get back the switch. She gets drawn back into the game from her handler, who brings her in He doesn't like her, she doesn't like him. You can tell there's a little animosity right there, but they still have a job to do. And it's one of those setups where the hero, or at least in this case the boss, walks in to negotiate with the bad guy who stole the switch, only to have the girl come in and kill all his henchmen. And he had a lot of henchmen in there. And she was able to pull the old switcheroo on her old handler, and that was actually pretty interesting. And it ends on a comedic note. It has some very good special effects, good line dialogue, and a nice ending. The ending was expected, but it was very good. I liked it. Next up, Take Me to Your Leader. This one could have been really good. This one could have been a contender, and one of the reasons is because they had really good special effects. That was one thing. They had this, guy watering his lawn. All of a sudden, a UFO shows up, where they start talking about, take me to your leader, and he actually winds up taking the ship to his girlfriend. And one of the other reasons is because I'll give you a little hint about this one. Take me to your leader. It turns out there are kids behind the whole thing. Where Take Me to Your Leader fell short was you couldn't really be 100% sure what the final result was. Like, you got that the men in black who were investigating the UFO were also, in fact, the parents of the kids who were playing with the UFO like they shouldn't have been. And so there's a little confusion here, and that wasn't clear, though. Okay, I kind of got that at the end after I thought about it, but it just didn't mesh like I wanted it to. And it really had a good idea, but it was a joke. It's kind of one of those jokes, kind of like a review where the reviewer's going all over the place, but he really can't find a good focus or anything. And that was this movie. Good movie, good potential, nice special effects. Yeah, slides down. Next up, Fist in Flight. This one, I almost wanted to stand up and yell cheater at them. I have to respect them because they didn't cheat. They just did the best they could with what they had, and they did a very good job with Fist in Flight. Basically, it was Chronicles meets Mortal Kombat type of thing, only without the tournament. You have these guys who are out in the middle of the desert. Next thing you know, a meteorite lands right next to them, and they get the superpowers to fly and to be impervious. And one of them wants to figure out their powers, not show off so much. The other wants to use his powers for good and save the world. None of them were completely evil. None of them were completely good. But the whole thing was just one big fist fight with them flying and then punching and then being on the ground and punching. And, one guy picking up another guy and throwing him down. It really should have been something. But this movie reminds me of the Final Fantasy movie. Was it Final Fantasy? Well, it's the one where the special effects are so awesome that they forgot about things like, writing, plot, characters, stuff like that. It was all pretty simple. That part was pretty basic, but you could tell they spent more time on the special effects than they did on other elements of a good movie. So while it was interesting and it had a great premise, it was wanting in the fundamental department. So that's Fist in Flight for you. Next up, not Lord of the Rings. Not something I would like to see again. This is just like one of those that first movie we saw, What Bit Me. This is let's throw in every nerd reference we can think of, copy the Lord of the Rings in a very crappy fashion, and hope it's funny. There's a lot of walking around. There's a lot of, people attempting to act and trying to just say lines that don't really mesh or connect with what's really happening. This guy just gets a ring one day, and this guy shows up and says, hey, you got to bring it to the Mount Doom and throw it in. And it really just didn't connect, especially with the fact that there's a lot of walking. They're in Tucson, by the way. I thought they were in South Mountain, but they were more in Tucson from what I understand. A lot of walking around, longer than it should have been, just didn't have the magic that you would hope for. All right, next up. Food porn! Hashtag food porn. Hashtag I don't like hashtag in titles. I'm not a big fan of... Twitter always got to me. I like Twitter better than Facebook, but I do not like this whole hashtag thing. Especially since one of my friends wouldn't stop saying hashtag at one point. This really could have been something. A lot of these movies had potential, and this one also had potential. Where it falls apart is that it's one of those grenade jokes. I know you guys never saw improv theater back in the day, like in the 80s, 90s, but there was this one guy who was famous for his, what he called grenade jokes, where he would tell a joke and he would throw it out there, but it would take a while before it really hit you, and then you start laughing. That's what food porn reminds me of. It's about this guy who has this girl comes in, and they're talking about food a lot. And you get the idea that there's a fondness for food, but you don't get that the fondness for food is to the extent that it really is until later on. They were trying to do a build-up, trying to do this build-up of, doing a show, talking about food, getting turned on by food, and going crazy because of food. It was good, but it was long, and it took a while for it to really kick in. A lot of it was sitting down saying, okay, what are you trying to tell me here? What am I supposed to be laughing at? What is this all about? And when it finally hits you, you're like, okay, and then the joke keeps going. There's an art to comedy where you can take something too far and you can take too long to get there. And these are the problems that food porn faces. Is that it was just hard to mix that up. All right, next up, Endure and Survive. This one was the hardest one to watch of them all. Not because it was bad, but because it was a complete separation from all the other ones. Other ones went for comedy, action, excitement, thrills. This one, melancholy, depression, sadness. It's the zombie apocalypse. So this guy goes around and, he's going through homes, trying to survive, trying to avoid zombies who have an amazing sense of hearing, and also trying to switch out comic books with somebody who's obviously long gone. I want to really judge this movie on its own merit, but the problem I had with it was, like I said, it's such a disconnect from what we came from. It was hard for me to, switch gears like this and get ready for such a melancholy film. So ultimately, I think it was a winner. It could have been a contender, but it just didn't fit the norm, and that's where it went wrong, because it was so hard to sense what was going on in terms of, mood. And this mood shift, I couldn't do it properly. So that's the problem with this movie. Percepto, The Destroyer, is the last movie. And yes, it is the winner of this film festival, no doubt. Percepto, The Destroyer was good because, let's face it, they had it spot on. The story, the acting, the comedy was all there. Especially when it comes to this one Asian guy with glasses who was part of the Men in Black. They were able to pull off this silly stuff a lot smoother than most. And the way the lines jumped in was just hysterical. They were able to also make fun of one of their mistakes. There was a complete shift in focus, and that made the show difficult to watch. But acknowledging that shift in focus was really what made this movie work. It was funny at the end. They had a lot of cute little story plots, unexpected story plots, like this one guy and this other guy were supposed to be twin brothers, and yet it just didn't connect. But everything was, given a good reason, it was given a good purpose, and it was just really funny. So I don't know if this happened. I would imagine this happened. This was the last one they showed, and I think they showed it for good reason. Perceptive the Destroyer, best one of the bunch. They all did a good job. I know I ragged on some of them. These are all beginners, but they are also part of a film challenge. So I'm going to be harder on this group than I am on other groups, because this isn't some let's put it on Phoenix Comicon and hope people watch it. This is let's put this in a competition and see what people think of it, and that's what I did here. That's what I thought of it today, guys. We will see you at the theaters.